DevBox lore time. Out in the real world, beyond this little box where you watch me beat my head against these games, I, Prakuza, am one of those left-handed freaks that stumbles around this right-handed world. I have a 9-year reduced life expectancy, and I've made my peace with my early death. Ever since being told about it, like, once a month as a child. Fun fact, that isn't a fun fact to tell a left-handed 5-year-old. And I speak from personal experience. However, being a lefty in this righty world, sometimes it can be difficult to navigate around, having to rely on my offhand to function. Then, even as I attempt some escapism into the worlds of Lordran, Lothric, or the lands between, I'm faced again with needing to rely almost entirely on right-handed weapons. And my left hand is neglected to nothing but shields and maybe some spellcasting. Howdy, I'm Prakuza, and welcome to DevBox, where today we're asking the simple question, can we beat Dark Souls as a southpaw? Now, a few things to note for the run. What exactly counts as a left-handed and right-handed weapon? Well, we're going to take a look at the images from main hand and offhand weapons in the equip menu for that. So obviously your standard weapons, straight swords, curved swords, great swords, clubs, all of that is now being sent right to the left hand. That was clunky. Okay, these are taking their rightful place in my we're going to get this build on the right track by equipping it to my left. Fuck! Alright, well, main-hand weapons are obvious, but what about the offhand ones? That would normally include shields, but could also include bows, catalysts, and talismans, depending on how you prefer to use magic. However, we're not going to be taking magic into this, since I tend to cast from my main hand anyway, so shoving it in the right hand here feels off. Also, since magic is essentially ambidextrous, it doesn't really feel all too fitting for a lefty-only run. Additionally, even if bows can be equipped in either hand, in order to use them, the player character grips it in both hands and uses it as a right-handed archer. Trust me, this is not how I hold a bow, so what exactly does this leave for the offhand? Well, after playing a Gwendolyn run a while back, I could imagine considering a crossbow, but what I'm going for today is the other item shown in the offhand artwork. But we'll get to that when we get there. Okay, we've got some things to find, and now we start off this run by first killing the Asylum Demon, who we have to fight the traditional way, since black firebombs are thrown from the right hand. Yeah, no way to make that a lefty tool, so we drop down, can't do a plunging attack, and hack away with our scimitar. And to the scimitar specifically, let's talk about our starting class and gift. In this case, I started as the Wanderer, almost entirely for the outfit, but also because we're going with a dex build here. Again, entirely for aesthetics that will bite me in the ass later. And our starting gift is the Master Key, for obvious reasons. As far as the lefty Asylum Demon kill goes, it isn't too difficult, although there are certainly some growing pains trying to reset my Elden Ring muscle memory back to Dark Souls. Either way, the damage isn't too bad, and we move forward. In Lordran proper, we immediately head down to New Londo in order to find two things. First is a Firekeeper Soul to upgrade our flask right away. Second is the Parrying Dagger, our official offhand weapon of choice. Why? Well, because as we alluded to before, it is literally the weapon seen in the offhand artwork. And because this allows us to parry and riposte. Since this is already a two-handed maneuver, I'm going to allow it. Mostly because it will only come up against a single boss, since the vast majority of Dark Souls 1 can't be parried at all. Next, we'll be getting the Falchion from Blighttown, because it has the coolest looking parry to combine with the Parrying Dagger. And this parry is literally the only reason we'll be going with this build. In fact, I would be much better off using this only to hunt down a Dark Knight straight sword or other Dark Knight weapon to shove into my left hand and take a more strength-heavy build to the rest of the game. But Rule of Cool wins for now, and we'll be moving forward falchion in hand and twirly parrying everything we can. So, what's the first major boss we can fight? Oh, Taurus Demon. Well, we've upgraded the weapon a bit, so that certainly makes the fight go faster. But unfortunately, we can't do the plunging attack, again, or add the lightning risen to our weapon, since it only goes to the main hand weapon. In that case, we swipe at some ankles until Taurus Demon goes down, only without any of the ordinary bells and whistles to make the fight go much faster. Next up, we head out and start looking to upgrade our build a bit. That means upgrading both the falchion and parrying dagger at Andre. We'll also pick up the grass crest shield for the stamina recharge speed. We also head down and pick up the Calanthary ring for some extra stamina recharge. Is that how you pronounce that? Calanthary? Calanthary? Correct me in the comments. Then we use the Master Key to free Lautrec and kick him off the edge. Might have been better to actually fight him with my parries, but I'm right-footed in real life, so it works out if I'm really role-playing myself here. I'm also right-eye dominant, so as many of you might guess, I grew up an uncoordinated mess. Not exactly a sports star in high school, although I did love being in Little League and basketball in elementary. Anyway, that's enough Prakuza lore for today. Let's get back to fleshing out the build. For the next stop, we're going to have to duke it out with Capra Demon, because I'm looking to get depths access. We'll get into why later. For now, we have to fight against a demon. Now, most of you watching might already be aware of the stair strategy for separating the dogs from the boss and taking them out one at a time. However, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and give a little advice. Lefty is absolutely the way to go for these dogs. While I can't guard their attempts to bite me, I don't run into the usual problem of dinking off the wall whenever I try to attack them. Instead, the dogs go down with little to no issue. As for the demon himself, he's also not much of a problem, although this does show one of the main issues with my choice in weapon. Namely, using a fast swiping dex weapon in the left hand that doesn't have access to a real moveset. I really only get one good hit in at a time. With the weapon already at +5 though, it still makes decently quick work of the Capra Demon. Well, with our shortage on damage, we should head into the depths and pick up the large ember. This will give us access to +6 through 10. But the large Titanite shards we need aren't exactly as easily available as the regular shards were. Still, we can take this to Andre and get the upgrade started for now. And as much as I'd love to farm the stupid slugs in Blighttown, I'm not looking to do another overpowered with the fewest bosses type run like with the claws. So, I pick up what few large shards I can and prepare to go buy the remaining in Sen's Fortress. Also, I won't be using glitches or skips in this run, so no Sen skip for early access to the merchant that sells the upgrade materials I need. This then means that I need to head down into Blighttown and kill Quelaag in order to ring the first bell. Why did I decide to do Quelaag first and not the Bell Gargoyles? Honestly, if you could tell me, I'd be happy to know, because I asked that out loud when I realized that I'd already skipped the Gargoyles. Fortunately, I won't forget any other bosses on the way forward. Anyway, for Quelaag, she's one of the tankier bosses in the game, especially this early on. So this is a fight that goes on for a while. The biggest threat here is a combination of her giant explosion and running into the lava pools. Since this fight will be lasting a while, I can't exactly afford to burn through Estus Flask from either the near one-shot of the explosion or the chip damage from dipping my toes into the hot stuff. All the same, a few minutes of slashing away at her legs passes and eventually we're through, and we get to ring the first bell. No need to head down to Quelaag's sister or the Ceaseless Discharge yet. Instead, let's head back up and get a bit of a victory lap against the Bell Gargoyles. I mean, there's nothing else down towards Blighttown or the depths worth grabbing now that I've got the large ember and Quelaag's bell is rang. Also, finishing up the Gargoyles will let us get our next couple of major upgrades for our weapon. Yeah, as awesome as the Falchion is, this is not the endgame build, even if the damage against the Gargoyles is insanely high. Damn, them some chunky hits. Well, Gargoyles down in record time, that means we've finally got access to Sen's Fortress. This will do a few things for us, but for now, let's focus on getting through some of these sneaky boys and girls. A parry here, a dagger riposte there, and we're through to our first goal, the Crestfallen Merchant. He's a bit of a downer, but he also sells us large Titanite shards, which with an extra 9 of them, we can get our Falchion all the way to +10. Now, could I have done this earlier, and for less souls, by farming the slugs in Blighttown? Yes. Why didn't I? To make Quelaag tougher, I guess? Actually, the real reason is because last time I went for the farming method, it took like 4 hours and required me to walk my way out of Blighttown instead of warping directly back up to Firelink. So yeah, lazy and speed won over greed and patience. It's not like I'd have had much other use for a bunch of souls anyway. I always end every casual run with like 100,000 worth of consumables in my inventory. all unspent. You know, in case I need it later, like after killing the final boss. I don't know, I might do a New Game Plus run or something. Yeah, so anyway, we've got a plus 10 weapon, which means that now we're ready to kill the Iron Golem. So like Quelaag, it appears that we're running into another issue of the old low damage numbers. Still enough to get the stagger surprisingly, and with some good positioning, the Iron Golem falls over the edge, giving us access to Anor Londo, which he could have fallen over the edge the first time I knocked him down, but you know. Sorry, no glam shot of the city. The impatience was really creeping up on me here. I think that legendary Elden Ring run has gone ahead and completely destroyed any sense of patience still living within me. Speaking of a lack of patience, I've got none of these painted guardians. Or the fucking arch... Welp. Guess I'm killing both of you now, because I'm petty and vindictive and hate to leave anything incomplete, like the rest of the Silver Knights. Yeah, no stairs jump skip for me today. I mean, that's mostly because we're going glitchless, which I only bring up again so that those of you who watch this far can go check on those comments telling me to do send skip for early merchant access, or item dupe for the Titanite shards I needed. Until then, I sense in you a lack of patience. Anyway, a few dead Silver Knights later, and we've found our next goal to finalize the build. Kinda. We're still going to need some more upgrade materials in a bit, but that's neither here nor there. What is here is the giant blacksmith, and with his help, we can transform our falchion into its final form. Quelaag's Fury Sword. A fairly strong weapon that I actually used for my first casual playthrough of Dark Souls. Except for on Gwyn. I never even hit that guy. Summoned another player for the first time, and they absolutely exploded his face with Smo's hammer. Again though, neither here nor there. Although Smo actually is here, and he and Ornstein fare much better against the Fury Sword than I initially expected. Something to note here is that I haven't exactly been gathering much humanity, and the Fury Sword being a Chaos Flame weapon means that it actually improves as I gain more of the humanity currency. The one in the top left next to my health, not in my inventory. So since I'm currently rocking not a single humanity at all, the Fury Sword is in its weakest form. I'll be working on that for some later fights, but for now, I'm not exactly ready to burn through my well-earned humanity quite yet. After all, there's a use for that coming up. For now though, we take down Ornstein in a rather elongated fight and move on to Super Smo. This is where I run into a unique issue of being a lefty, thanks to the way that Smo's hammer doubles as a bit of a shield. See, any attack that hits the hammer before hitting his body will treat the attack as if it hit the solid metal weapon and not the squishy metal body of Smo. So, with the weapon swinging wide and to the left, I need to be very careful about my positioning to make sure that my attacks actually manage to land. This means some attacks like the jumping slam, not the butt slam, the overhead jump attack, are no longer viable for a punish without careful positioning. However, his side-to-side swing is still very much a useful option. In the end, it takes some time, but Smo goes down with less effort than a lot of fights. Alright, with ONS dead, that means we can also start warping around the world. To start, let's head back to the Undead Asylum and take on the Stray Demon. Now, while the Fury Sword might be a fine weapon, it's certainly not the optimal way to take on this enemy. At least, not while left-handed. Instead, we're going to swap out for one of the Painted Guardian swords that I found while making my way through Anor Londo. While the raw damage seems like a major drop, these swords have a bleed effect on them, and the Stray Demon is very susceptible to being bled. A few bloody swipes later, and we've got the big boy down and a nice Titanite slab to upgrade our parrying dagger with. Yep, that's what this is going to. Don't you dare judge me. Look at that riposte damage. Totally worth it. Besides, the Fury Sword doesn't need it. Instead, that thing takes the Demon Titanite I farmed from this Titanite demon. If you're wondering how I got here, by the way, I took the Chaos Covenant shortcut. Partially because I wanted to save Solaire, and also because I didn't want to have to fight Centipede Demon with a fire weapon. Oh, and I did kill Ceaseless on the way here. Dropped him right off the edge. Super easy, barely an wait, I don't think I can afford to violate that trademark. Also, If you're wondering how I managed to get the humanity after already complaining that I didn't have enough to actually get the max power out of the Fury Sword, well, eventually patience won out. Patience and the power of having YouTube open on the second screen while I do the same farm I used to do whenever I played this game with friends back in college. And I would certainly suggest this if you intend to play with friends yourself. Trust me on this one and have a handful of heals for yourself, not your friends. They cannot be trusted to Estus enough to keep you topped off. Not in OG Dark Souls. Those several annoying farming sessions now behind us, let's finish gathering up some more gear. In this case, I need some new duds. These are starting to look a little worn out. For that though, we need to head into the DLC. Let's rapid fire this part of the prep. It's boring, nothing too notable. Head into Duke's Archives for the Broken Pendant, kill the Hydra, rescue Dusk, and finally get grabbed by Manus' big grabby hand. Alright, we're in the Sanctuary Garden with some of the tankiest, fastest, most aggressive bosses in the game. And my weapon is at half speed because it's in the wrong. I mean because the world hates us lefties. Shouldn't be a problem though, right? Yeah, Sanctuary Guardian is enough of a pain on a good day. This thing really loves to knock me around, and my Elden Ring omnidirectional dodging muscle memory is absolutely not ready to fight something this aggressive with a game this clunky. The cavalcade of deaths on screen right now amount to about 2 hours worth of beating my head against this wall. However, as difficult as it might be, the Sanctuary Guardian eventually goes down, after 6 minutes of hit and runs and all of my Estus. But now that we've killed Sanctuary Guardian, we can find our real target here. Marvelous Chester. No, I'm not here to talk, I'm here to kill. Hey, get back here and let me kill you. There, one more hit and that fancy coat is What? Now you're feeling the heat? You should have thought long. Another hour later, and we actually take this bastard down. Yeah, I actually got this close on the first fight, then it took an extra hour to actually take him down. Really doesn't help that Chester can't be parried, since he uses a crossbow and a unique kick attack. Or at least I couldn't figure out the parry timing if there is a parry for that kick. Also, fuck those stupid bleed darts. Anyway, now that we've got our fit set up, let's leave this DLC behind forever. I mean, I never want to come back here, so let's head back to the base game. Next stop, Bed of Chaos, since we've already unlocked the path straight there. Now, for those of you in the know, you might be wondering why I'm bothering to actually make the run between the two nodes on either side of the giant tree. Man. Woman? I actually don't know. I always saw it like a bearded old man, but according to the lore, that is the original witch of Isolate. And the bug in the bottom is eventually reborn as the lost sinner, who is a woman, so like, yeah, giant tree woman? Neat. Also, I've buried the lead with another tangent. Let's get back to the reason I'm doing the legit fight and not throwing firebombs. Well, that's for two reasons. One is that the bow can only be held with the right hand dominant pose, which means that aiming is a right-handed task. The same also goes for the binoculars option, so the harder version of the cheese also isn't viable. Then the second reason is something we covered all the way back with the Asylum Demon. Firebombs are thrown with the right hand, which means we can't use them. Of course, with or without cheese, Bed of Chaos goes down with little extra effort. She's still the main reason my casual playthroughs run out of steam after ONS, because of how annoying this fight is. But she's definitely beatable. Well, with our first Lord Soul down, let's head into the catacombs for our next target. However, before we get there, we can do a little prep. Starting with our old friend the Painted Guardian Sword, but it's not complete yet. First, we need to give it a helpful buff. That means killing the Moonlight Butterfly and getting the Divine Emperor for Andre. This lets us turn the Painted Guardian Sword into the Divine Painted Guardian Sword. Talk about a mouthful. But hey, hopefully it's worth all of that effort. Or... Cool, glad I went and hunted that down for this. Guess it's Fury Sword o'clock, with the helpful addition of rushing to kill the Pyromancers. A couple dead Pyromancers later, and a couple of falls, which definitely don't count as skips since I don't have to jump over railings or deload walls to do it, and we're at Pinwheel. Once again, nothing even remotely of note to mention here. except that I killed Pinwheel before they could teleport. And I got the Mask of the... And we're in Tomb of the Giants, without having killed Patches yet too. Which means we get the free kick to the bottom so we can challenge Vince and Nito. Why? Does it help the build? Nope, but it does give me an excuse to... Fun times. Same for this Black Knight, and then Nito. No parrying for him. Stupid Dark Souls 1 boss is not being parryable. Guess I've got to kill him the old-fashioned way, with a flurry of swipes from the Fury Sword. Or maybe more like a series of furious individual swings. Boy, does suck that us lefties don't know how to combo. The skeletons cause a bit of trouble, and I try the Divine Painted Guardian Swords again, but Nito kills his own minions before I can, which of course means that I can't stop them from reviving. So I go ahead and ignore them, baiting Nito into wiping them out periodically as I dodge his attacks. I also keep the fight off in this corner enough to not have to deal with the giant skeletons. That does mean having to eat some of the miasma AoEs, but it's better than calling in any more adds to cluster up this fight. Still, the Fury Sword does work and Nito eventually goes down. That's 2 Lord Souls down, 2 to go. And for some reason, I decided to go for the 4 Kings next. Although, in this case, while I've already long drained Nulando for the extra large ember from before, leveling up my parrying dagger, I completely forgot to get the Covenant of Artorias from Sif. A small mistake that costs me a death, but not in the way you might expect. Yeah, sometimes rushing can be rather dangerous. Run past dozens of enemies at your own risk. Alright, heading back to Sif, she also doesn't put up much of a fight, but that's nothing new. Sif isn't often the most difficult fight, and my wide swipes with the Fury Sword are more than capable of hitting her while I'm anywhere underneath her. The hardest thing is watching the poor girl limp in the final moments before we put her out of that misery. And ring obtained. Awesome! Dead dog, not awesome. Hey, I've got a question. You know, I'm dropping down here in full Havel gear because poise and defense absolutely dominates the 4 Kings, but it would be nice to have the FAP and Havel rings on at the same time. So what happens if I take the Covenant of Artorias off while I'm down here? I mean, I already made it past the death plane. Put it back on. Put it back on. I think it might be a bit too late. Okay. Never doing that again. Well, 4 Kings with the ring on for the entire fight this time, and we're not doing too poorly, actually. Again, the Havel armor really helps to trivialize this fight, removing a lot of the threat that the 4 Kings pose, at least as long as it's still a one-on-one fight. The stone armor is another great option, but I already picked up Havel's stuff in Anor Londo, so I might as well go big or go home. And as far as going big goes, the Fury Sword does enough damage to take out each king before the next one spawns. It's a pretty tight window, and some bad RNG nearly takes me at the end, since the grabs and explosions are able to extend the fight long enough that 2 kings might be spawned at the same time. However, as long as I keep the aggression up, even all 5 of the 4 kings together can't stand against the power of the lefty. And then there was one, Seath. I can't really say why I saved Seath for the finale. Maybe I was holding my favorite endgame location for last, so I could savor it properly with my most akin build to date. Well, I don't know if I'd say it was worth it, since for the most part, all I'm doing is running through the Duke's Archives and Crystal Caves. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The first of our final steps here starts by heading up to Seath's first encounter. No Duke skip today, instead we're killing the Crystal Knight, easily done with these parries, and heading in to get killed by the Grand Duke himself. A rather uneventful death. Well, in our next area, we run into the bane of so many challenge runs, but fortunately, even a left-handed weapon can reach through these bars. So we're good. Kill the Snake Man, and it's time to head back into the archives proper. Now we get to travel through the back rooms, not those creepy yellow wallpaper ones, the ones with the backlogs of Seath's Grand Archives, where he has apparently written down and kept the exact terms for how his immortality works and how to end it. Fortunately for him, the Chosen Undead has no interest in reading. Unfortunately for him, the crystal is huge, glowing, and at the end of the obvious next dungeon. At least if he's careful and doesn't break the damn thing. Ooh, bud. That's not good. Not a good look. Thrashing around and breaking your own shit. No wonder Guinevere left you. Still can't believe this guy is Priscilla's father. Oh yeah, that reminds me, I've got some extra bosses to clean up before the endgame, which we're at now that Seath is dead. Huh? He's dead and I didn't really describe the fight in detail? Well, that's because once you learn Seath's tells, there's really nothing of note for any melee build, even left-handed. Run from the claw swipe, close-up breath attack, and crystal explosion, and run in close against anything else, focusing on the edge of his crotch ball. Different crotch ball. Anyway, let's go get some of that cleanup done before we head out to kill Gwyn, starting with Priscilla. Turns out, being a lefty does cause some issue in the painted world, since the left hand can't do a jump attack. Anywhere else, that wouldn't be a problem. However, the second half of the painted world can usually be skipped if you jump attack the zombie dragon. Without doing that, we then need to run the long way, which means actually fighting the greatsword wielding Steel Knight for once. The rest of the place is simple enough too. In fact, Bone Wield Alley was so inconsequential that I didn't even think to capture it. Priscilla, on the other hand, well, we've got a fire weapon, and we've finally picked up some of that extra humanity to boost our damage. So she doesn't stay invisible for long, and we even get her dagger, which we won't be using. Not sure why I still bother with all the tail cuts when they aren't good for the build. Speaking of not good for the build, our last bit of cleanup comes in the form of Gwendolyn. This one is a little tougher, as my damage isn't quite on point enough to cause a stagger. That is, if I even manage to get a single hit at all. Still, there is a brief moment after the boss has already disappeared where there is a chance to get a little damage in. So on the runs in here where I actually manage to deal some damage, the stunted lefty combo does manage to deliver. And my giant health bar keeps me from getting womboed by the crossbow. In the end, Gwendolyn extends the fight out a bit for my liking, but I get the win all the same. And with her master dead, the Brass Knight Firekeeper lady decides it's time to fuck me up, which she nearly succeeds at doing, since I am absolutely ass at parrying daggers. Still, fighting her does give me a chance to show off another defense of my build. Notice what's in her offhand. That's right, it's a parrying dagger, an offhand weapon, which means it totally works as my right-hand weapon for parries and riposte. Totally valid. Want to know what else is valid? Giving up when things are too hard, like the DLC. Most importantly, Artorias, the hardest boss in all of Dark Souls 1. Except for maybe Calamite and the Handman. But I've honestly heard different people name different ones of the three bosses as their quote-unquote hardest boss. So that seems to be very much subjective. Regardless, Artorias might be notorious for kicking new players' teeth in, but he isn't usually as much of a roadblock for me in recent years as the two that come after him. Now, as I've been making my case for Artorias to not be the toughest thing this DLC has to offer, how's the damage of my numerous deaths been looking? Looking like I don't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting through this? Yeah, my thoughts exactly. So I decided to leave the DLC behind for now. It's honestly kind of disheartening. I'd have ignored the DLC entirely in the script if it wasn't for the fact that I wind up wearing Chester's trench coat for like half the run. Instead, I'll have to take this L and move on. Man, I had all these plans, like I was gonna save Demon Fire Sage and Centipede Demon for right before the end and pretend I forgot them right at the door to Gwyn, only to have to turn around and finish them off. But, I don't know man, fuck it. Let's go ahead and get them over with. Demon Fire Sage is, He is as equally weak to bleed as the Stray Demon was, so the Painted Guardian Sword makes quick work of him. To be honest, this one is also ironically weak to fire damage as well, so the Fury Sword wouldn't have even been a bad option either. Nothing to write home about, a boring fight that was supposed to be a last-minute oh shit I forgot joke. Speaking of, we've got the only other non-DLC boss that I left out for the bit. The Centipede Demon. This asshole is an asshole. Kinda got ahead of myself there. Anyway, the Fury Sword is not even close to viable against this guy. Although I will say that the Painted Guardian Sword absolutely shreds this dude. And it's only at +6 right now. So our damage is a little hampered from a lack of upgrade materials. But a few bleed procs do help to make up the difference. There aren't as many opportunities to hit as on Fire Sage, and the proc comes out on like the 6th hit instead of the 3rd, but the bleed still manages to do the work. And we put the Centipede Demon in the ground for good. All that's left is to kill Gwyn, which first we have to get past the Black Knights. Those swords are nice. Wait, could that be the key? Okay, so I did some grinding, and I have a new weapon, enough Twinkling Titanite to level it up, and the stats to wield it. It doesn't have the awesome parry of the curved swords, but what it lacks in finesse, it more than makes up for in damage. Case in point, we're back to Artorias, and we're finally doing manageable damage. In fact, I can even stop him from powering up if I'm lucky, and can see it coming ahead of time. He's got a pretty subtle tell that he's about to buff. See that? The double back roll? Yeah, that's it. Now, you might think that it's clear as day and painfully obvious, but to some of us, those of us who see that back roll and expect it to be followed up immediately by a lunge or jump attack, that looks like a strafe to the side and wait for a punish opportunity moment, not a run forward and punish before he can buff moment. Regardless, no matter how well I figure out his tells, it wasn't doing me any good with the Fury Sword, since it didn't have the damage with the stunted left-handed combo to actually stop his buff phase. With the Black Knight Sword though, yeah, I've got a real chance with this weapon, and eventually a real chance leads to a real fight, and finally, a real win. Guess all we've gotta worry about next is, oh right, Calamite and the Handman. Well, here we go, I guess. Let's go Calamite next, since Manus works better thematically for the finale of the DLC. Anyway, DLC Dragon, this shit is pretty manageable with the Black Knight Sword. Full disclosure, I kind of knew this would be the case from the beginning, which is one reason why I didn't start by farming up a Black Knight weapon to use right from the start. Another option, aside from the Black Knight gear, would also be the giant blacksmith's hammer, but that seemed too mean. Still, even in the left hand, the Black Knight Sword deals enough damage to mitigate for the terrible attack speed of the stunted left-handed combo. This would likely also be the case for most strength-based weapons that deal most of their damage in a single hit, rather than a combo. So choosing the Falchion from the beginning, and eventually the Fury Sword, may have given me an awesome parry, but it actually made this build much, much harder than it needed to be. Anyway, while I've been rambling, I've been fighting Calamite, and the fight is going pretty well. Most of this fight is about baiting out the attacks that are easy to punish or evade. Unlike his stupid craning neck head swipe attack that grabs me and pulls me in even though I'm dodging so that I still get hit by the end of his hitbox while my iframes wear off. Still, the Black Knight Sword eventually does its job, and this dragon, Calla, meets his fate. That was painful. Like, truly a part of my soul has died for that pun. I hope it was worth it. No? No, what? Oh, cool. Fun. Well, I'll tell you what's not worth it. Fighting Manus. So I've de-rusted on the DLC a bit since my claw-only playthrough, fighting these 4 bosses a few times now. However, no matter how many times I go for Manus, he never feels very fun. Like, not on the Over-Encumbered run, or the Moonlight Percent run, or any other time I've gone back to do this stuff. I don't know what it is. The Handman simply doesn't vibe with me. As such, I don't have much interesting to say. Stay out of the Wombo combo, slap the hand when he jump attacks, possibly summon the emotional support dog. Then eventually, the big hand guy dies, and we have one rescued Dusk, sitting there for some reason? I don't really know. I wasn't paying attention. Anyway, for the rest of you who have been paying attention, it's time for Gwyn. Let's see how he likes these parries.
You forgot the gaping dragon.
What? Well, shit. Guess I get to go check that one off the list. Can't believe I forgot another boss right before the end. Yeah. Okay, Gwyn, rematch time. There's the parries I was hoping for before. Yeah. With the power of parrying and abusing the Estus Flask technique, Gwyn doesn't stand a chance. Actually, while the parries continue to play out, I should explain the Estus Flask. So, turns out that for some reason, Gwyn is set to input read the flask drinking animation, and his response is usually one of his stronger attacks that can also clear some distance. However, from close range, it's a pretty slow swing that is super easy to parry repeatedly. That's what the chugging here is all about, to loop his AI into doing a move I can easily parry, deal a bunch of damage, drink while he starts to get up, then parry him all over again. Alright, end of the runtime. How'd we do? Well, as I mentioned earlier, this build really works better with a strength weapon, something that isn't as hindered by only getting a single hit off at a time. Any of the Black Knight weapons will also do, although it could definitely be argued that the halberd might take the biggest downgrade as a southpaw, since a lot of the strength of that weapon is in its combo. So this could have been a lot easier if I wasn't so concerned with being able to parry the whole time, something that only helped on a single boss, but come on, the curved sword parry is sick and totally worth my consistently lower DPS throughout the run. Another thing to note, since I didn't while I was in Anor Londo, there are a few enemy interactions that are actually improved by fighting left-handed. The giant sentinels, for instance. Since their shields are covering their left, our right, a lefty swing usually bypasses the shield entirely and hit right on target. A lot less need to do the strafe and bait tactics. So yeah, my conclusion on playing Dark Souls as a lefty is kinda mixed. Like, it's hilariously suboptimal, but not so out of left field that this was especially difficult. Except for the DLC. Finishing that with the Fury Sword is well beyond my skill set to complete. Still, it's nice to know that us lefties aren't completely forgotten by From Software, only generally ignored. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you liked it, which I hope you did if you made it this far, then consider tossing a like our way, and subscribe for more content coming all the time. Also, I'd like to take this final moment to invite you to support the channel on Patreon. Our patrons get a few perks like early access to content and their names listed in the credits of each video. And those who pledge $5 or more a month get their names shouted out, like Azul. And thanks to everyone who's been checking out the channel lately. See you soon.